After you, Adam.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world.
Oh, I like that. That's very good. It does that much. I think what we need to do, I need to pull that off this video and I need to play that every time we start because that sounded much better than my version. Well done. And that's
I
Adam
don't know
Fine
here.
joining us from the New Air Symposium. So we can have some bang up to date news from that then. Are you like concealed in the toilet or sneakily talking to us from the back of the room?
No, I'm at the very entrance of it, hiding behind this archway with all the sponsors on it, which my name is not on.
Oh, well, that's all right then. Well, you're completely entitled to do that then. Good day, Ian. How you doing, mate? Oh,
One day,
Mr.
one day the name will be there.
Yeah, Mr. Concrete Mixer. Good evening. No, 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 no. He's not. He's the man of the concrete mixer is not with us. We're
Oh, no,
also.
hello.
Oh, he is. He is. He is with us. He is with us. And we're also expecting a young man from the UK. Young James, but he's not here anyway. So let's move on. Let's move on without him. Let's move on to the first thing that I saw this week. And in fact, just before we started talking to Bruce and Louis about, well, in fact, we'll start with that one first. The building hitting incident in America. What did we all make of that fantastic bit of inspection work? Adam, perhaps you go first. You're in America. It can be your fault.
Oh, I'm terribly fearful for my life.
Oh, well, there we are. Well, no, well, Bruce.
No, I mean, I don't care. I don't care.
You don't care. You don't care. That's the wrong attitude. That's the wrong attitude.
Somebody broke a window is the gist, right?
That's basically it. In fact, it's now two windows, isn't it? Because they went to
the window was
look
broken.
at the broken window, and then they broke the thing coming down. And I don't know. I didn't pay much attention, but I'm afraid the first thing, and we mentioned it before we started, the first thing I thought was, who does a real grown-up inspection with a Phantom?
Not only that, everybody must supply an operations manual, have a lot of safety measures in place to do an industrial work. For instance, even on a remote location like my company works, where we are nearby wind turbines that are stopped, they are not working while we operate the survey. We have a series of measures that we interrupt the operation immediately. For instance, if someone gets nearer 50 meters from the flight zone. So how come a guy can go and inspect a high rise without defining a perimeter in the ground for safety? I don't know. Something else. Although, for instance, our drones operate autonomously, they are using a robot to drive them. We always rely on an experienced pilot so that he can operate the drone manually if he wants to. So any drone operator must be able to do manual flights. Either it is tail first or head first, he must be able to operate the drone. Granted, it's very hard to operate a drone at 150 meters high. You don't have the perspective of distance. It's a real hard thing to operate on those conditions, but you have to train yourself. And I believe the operator perhaps was not using the best machine to operate that inspection, and perhaps he failed to do a manual escape from the situation. Because I'm doing now, I'm all over this safety stuff because I'm doing some new safety manuals for my company for a new type of operation. So on every flight phase, you have to always have at least one safety measure trained to be executed. That's what is not the case. And if the operator was a professional Part 107 certified, that's even worse. That means that Part 107 has no value.
Well, there's no.
Well, I
There's
don't know. I don't know about that. I mean, we're currently in the process of doing our safety stuff. We just posted a little teaser vid of our emergency procedure operations and training with a brand new crew, never operated the aircraft before, and they did great. They did an excellent job because they were following the manual. But I'm wondering if we're treading on eggshells a bit because these sort of things are going to happen, and we're going to have to accept that they're going to happen. And the result of it was a broken window. So I'm not going to freak out and try and get all immediately defensive for the entire industry over a broken window when we all need to just accept that accidents are going to happen in this industry, and they're likely not going to cause very many deaths.
But that was not the issue, perhaps, because the guy was hired to check if the window was broken, because it was broken. For me, the biggest issue is people walking below the operation area. That, for me, was the biggest problem. Not that the drone crashed with the building, that can happen, but that there was people below the operations. That was, for me, the biggest issue. And if you are doing the safety manuals, you know that's always a no-no.
It struck me as amateur right from the start, because the thing that concerns me with this is we've seen this on YouTube many a time. Anyone that's flying professionally should at least know about GPS and multipath signals. So if you're up near a glass building, you're going to have the GPS bouncing off the building. It's going to be unreliable. So that should have been factored in advance. So apparently they had the wrong, it was suggested they put on prop guards, but they put them on for the wrong Phantom model. So they don't fasten on particularly well. So that's probably why it came down. But that shouldn't have been the mitigation. They should have thought GPS isn't reliable in this situation that we're in. So, I mean, like personally, if I was doing that, not only would I have had the street covered, I would have been using a drone that's just got a zoom lens, so you don't even have to get in close anyway. Because even if you were flying in manual, it can be a bit tricky if you've got a gust of wind. If you're relying on GPS and then it glitches, I mean, it can glitch at full throttle. So even if you did try to switch to manual and correct, you might hit something before that. So it just struck me as something that wasn't well thought out from the very beginning. So I think they do have some questions to answer there. I think you could actually put that down and say the operator hasn't prepared for that well enough, in fairness.
It's been so much fun watching the different opinions. We got Louis gone all safety Nazi on us and reckons we need to have a safety plan to stop the model from, or the drone from hitting the window. Adam says let them land where they fall. And I can't understand. They wanted to see if the window was broken. Why didn't they send someone upstairs to have a look out of it? Maybe that didn't work. So they said to the guy with the drone, said to the guy drone, guys, is that window broken? So he takes off, smack. Yep, it's broken because I just hit it. It's crazy stuff. And no amount of safety planning will prevent people doing stupid things. And obviously the guy, even if you had a whole stack of safety manuals, which you could have stood on to look through the window, it wouldn't have stopped the drone from hitting the window. And so my point is sort of Darwinism is a valuable part of our species. If we didn't have Darwinism, we wouldn't continue to develop as a species. If you put too much safety in place, you remove the effect of Darwinism, you end up with too many stupid people in the world. So I think we should have hired the Rotor Riot team to dive that building. They could have filmed the whole damn thing in about 3 seconds and problem solved.
Yeah,
that's a way, but then they won't be relying on GPS, Bruce.
Exactly, that's a good point. I always see people flying Mavics and Phantoms and things doing this stuff. And have you noticed on the drone fail videos how buildings are a magnetic attraction to Phantoms? And in Spires too, I've seen so many videos of Phantoms just flying straight into buildings. And I'm thinking, I would never use a Phantom with GPS or anything with GPS flying in that environment. I'd use FPV. I can see exactly where I am. I can do a 360 in half a second, see my sort of situational awareness. Why would I use a GPS guided drone to do that stuff when the signal is going to be so unreliable that I'm just asking for trouble?
But Bruce, you would have people removed from below the area you were operating. For me, it's the biggest issue on that situation.
Yeah, leave the stupid people there. We don't need them, but take all the smart people out of the way.
Have you got a test for that?
People.
Sorry, say again, Adam?
Fully agreed on that. There should not be people walking under an operation. I think that's understood.
Yeah. Yeah, in the comments, Ian Gates saying that there's no because there is no practical flight demonstration in the Part 107 test. There's no flying ability test, which is a little bit crazy, but at the same time, maybe it's appropriate in the modern world moving forward. Do you really need it?
Could you get a pilot's license without a practical test? You couldn't get a pilot's license without a practical test. It's the same in New Zealand. There was no practical test to the commercial certification for flying drones. And I'm thinking, it's crazy. Can't drive a car without a practical test. Can't fly a plane without a practical test. But you can take these evil baby-killing spying drones and fly them without a practical test. How does that work?
Absolutely. And good evening to young James there. How are you doing?
Hello. Yes, very well, thank you. Thanks very much for having me on.
Very good.
Sorry, I had a few technical problems to start with.
That's all right.
Straight away,
That's we have technical problems through the entirety of this, so it's absolutely fine and completely accepted and acceptable. I'm just going to go.
The whole show's a technical problem.
Exactly. That's all.
I'll fit in well then.
Exactly what it is. Andy Lee Robinson says in the comments, here's a question: is a tethered drone a drone? Surely, if it's tethered, then it's more like a kite and can't fly off. I think I'll answer my version first. I think depending on which country you live, your regulator may or may not have bought tethered drones within the regulations. But yeah, if it's a powered tether and when it comes off, if the tether breaks, it falls to the ground, yes, it becomes a rock, doesn't it? Anyone else want to weigh in on that?
Not exactly,
is a brick on a string any more dangerous than a brick not on a string?
No, because most of those drones have some kind of battery power on board. And then they have a power cord up to where they operate. But they can fly off, because if they get a glitch and try to fly away, they'll break the cable, because the cable is very fragile. But they can fly away.
What if their power source is received through the cable, though? We actually had another team that won the same competition we were in, whose very product is a tethered drone, and they inserted some language into the new FAA Reauthorization Act of 2018 to allow for essentially public aircraft operations for tethered drones, which was based off of a previous piece of legislation that allowed for aerostats, which are tethered balloons. So currently, they've opened up tethered drones to be regulated by the FAA.
Okay, well, there's your answer then. So they are regulated by the FAA in the USA.
If it's passed, it's currently not passed the Senate yet.
And in the UK, sorry.
After you, Ian.
I was going to say, in the UK, it's the case they're still considered drones, but if you're a commercial operator and you've got a tether, you can potentially get lesser restrictions. And I know the police in some of the demonstrations they've done, although their permit allows them to fly drones about and they don't have the same conditions, they've still put a tether on in some cases just for their own peace of mind, for safety when they're flying the drones near crowds of people.
Yeah, it's an old chestnut that pops up every once in a while, doesn't it? People think, oh, well, we'll tether it and all will be good. Over to you, Bruce.
That'll happen. Like I can see our local parks here. You have to have your dog on a leash. So will we have drones on a tether only at our local parks? Same thing.
There was that fantastic thing. Was it called the photo kite that actually pulled against a string? There was a fantastic one kicking about a couple of years ago. I don't know whatever happened to that. And that was the very premise of that thing, was that it wasn't going to go anywhere. But it was a very impressive bit of kit.
That's the one that I was referring to. They actually got $1 million from this competition we were in.
Oh, that's lucky then, isn't it? Thank goodness I didn't say another brand name. That was lucky.
No. I've seen the initial product was a consumer one, and that one I've seen in person. I have not seen the other two. There was one in a video for some sort of inspection. I'm not sure. It was an indoor inspection of something, and then the latest version I'm not entirely sure of the status of. Yeah,
I just remember seeing it flying at sort of very crazy angles and stuff, and it looked very good. Oh, okay, so they're also in are they at your conference where you're at now then, at the New Air Symposium?
No, but Chris McCall, the CEO, is in town. I could talk to him tomorrow about what's going on, and if he's willing to discuss things. I'm not sure what's going on right now. I haven't seen him in a whole while.
Later on, I was gonna mention, and I'll mention it now, but an awful lot of companies last week managed to receive VC funding. It was a little bubble up of VC funding occurred, which we haven't seen the likes of for a little while. I won't mention any names, but I thought it was quite interesting. And that's where we'll leave that. See, this is how it goes, James. So, James, you are from Project Air. That's your channel. But people won't know. I loved your video of the thing at Flight Fest, which I thought was very akin to Thunderbird 2. And that's I got into your channel and started watching your videos and enjoying that. And you were at Flight Fest because you're actually a flight test chappie. You're the webman.
Yes, I am. Been doing that for about a year now. More intensely over the months, but yeah, I write all of the articles on there. Well, all of the flight test articles on the flighttest.com website, and I also do a few other things in the background. And yeah, I went to Flight Fest this year, and that was fantastic. That was the first time I've been, so I had an excuse to go this time and make the trip. But yeah, it's been really fantastic this year.
And are you an aero modeler of old? Not that you're very old, in actual fact. I probably do have underpants as old as you. But
everyone says that I look incredibly young. So I'm 20. Well, I'm 23 on Friday. So, but yeah, I've been flying since I was about 12, maybe something like that. So yeah, I've been going for quite a while. Had a Park Zone Super Cub. I think that was my first.
Oh yes,
one. Yeah. And then, but I've been building like balsa wood models since I was like 5 or something like that, because I used to just get given bits of balsa wood and stick them together and all of that lot. So that's what's progressed into like my YouTube channel, where I just make various projects, and they're very sort of hit and miss. Some of them are a bit sketchier than other ones, but yeah, it's good fun.
That's very good. I don't know, has anyone else viewed the channel and seen it? Mr. Simpson, have you had a look at this channel?
Indeed, I have. There's some interesting little projects there. Yes, great. I think everyone should subscribe now. Go and do it. Press the button.
Thank you very
much. Usually for me, the link's already in the comments thing below.
Excellent. Yes. Yeah, no, it's great. I hope a lot of younger people are watching it and getting the buzz to build stuff, because, of course, building stuff these days is a lost art almost.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what we're trying to push at Flight Tests, especially at the moment, is scratch building and DIY and stuff. And yeah, I've been watching your channel for years, Bruce. So thank you very much for those words. But yes, I'm all for that, and that's what I'm trying to sort of aim at the moment. Now my channel's getting a bit more traction, is to sort of try and inspire people to do their own projects, and then post them on my Facebook page or whatever, to sort of share with people. And yeah, it's been really good and really encouraging so far. So
no, well done. Stick with us and just jump in and smack us old guys around with a bit of balsa wood or something when we say something wrong now, and put us right, because I'm sure we'll need putting right on something or other. Let's move on to the next controversial thing that's occurred in the UK today. In the UK today, in the Houses of Parliament, there was a meeting about RPAS and about things and stuff and things, all sorts of things. And quite by coincidence, oh yeah, it was all about things. It's things, some things I'm not allowed to say about. That's why I'm not saying a thing about things. But quite by chance, on the very self-same day, because I think it happened today, didn't it, Ian? There was a chap, and I do think the press is playing a little bit of a blinder with it, because I think
you're talking about the sun, the oracle of everything, objective.
Yeah, absolutely, of course. So it might be that they are perhaps suggesting that somebody that happened to be flying in a park nearby, perhaps a tourist with no idea where Theresa May might be, was flying his machine. But it did highlight that the police just said tut tut tut, naughty boy, and the commercial industry in the UK is a little bit upset about that, isn't it, Ian?
Yeah, it's because it's a continual theme. It's if you want to be legal and do everything by the book, you end up with all these rules, and it makes your life hard, difficult, expensive. and then you've got people that do as they please, and there's no penalty. So it's trying to get the balance right. I mean, it's all this as well as you're trying to throw more laws at us, give us more red tape, and people say, well, wait a minute, before you do that, how about enforcing the laws that already exist? You know, at least give somebody a bleeding caution, or, you know, just at least look like you're the least bit bothered, which at the moment, as we've talked about before, just because there aren't anybody getting taken to court anyway, you know, nigh on nobody, that, you know, it is frustrating. And especially as we've seen in the previous weeks, where we've got commercial operators taking film of news events, and then you've got the channels. Funnily enough, actually, one of the BBC report they've got like a program that sort of replies back for BBC behaviour and complaints. They said that they'll look at responding over the fact that the BBC used illegal footage for the fire in Ireland, but in Northern Ireland. But yeah, it's that entire frustration that the commercial operators are just feeling that we're spending this money, and it's not just the money; it's the fact that you can't get the shots. You know, if you're trying to adhere to the rules, you know, for example, taking the fire in Belfast, you know, the legal operator was there outside or the edge of the city centre using a zoom to get a picture, and then you've got a hobbyist that's flying down the main street with people below, right up to the fire and taking a photo of it. So he gets the cooler footage as well. So it's like you just cannot compete, and that's where the frustration is for the commercial operators. I mean, if you're going to go for the rules, and again, as you were mentioning earlier, in other countries, you don't even have a practical test. Here, we've got to do a practical test as well, and then you don't get any slack for it. You know, if you're a commercial operator and you're flying a Mavic, you've still got to be 50 meters away from people, unless you then spend more money, about 1,500 quid, on an OSC that can take 6 months to go through to get that distance down. So I think if we're not going to enforce the laws, then we should actually make the laws for the legal operators be less restrictive, so at least we can get similar shots. I think it's those kind of rants. But yeah, the industry is not happy, and they're not happy because no one even replies or even seems to acknowledge that there's a problem. You know, you always see people tagging the CAA, and you know it's tumbleweed back. You know, and it's the people in power in the that work for like the Department of Transport. None of them are on Twitter or social media, so you can't even tag them and say, "Look, what's going on." So it just feels like there's a complete disconnect that we can't raise things to the people in power, apart from all the official channels. I mean, so some of the people that have the power to do something about this don't even publicize their email addresses. So it just feels like you don't even get a chance to have a rant at them or make you feel a little bit better.
Well, yes, and you've had because that's why I wanted James to come this way. I wanted to try and get it a bit more light-hearted this week, because it's been a bit. The last few weeks have been a bit grim, really, with the regulations and stuff coming up. Well, but it's necessary. But over in the UK on Sunday, and somebody please point us to a YouTube link for those of us overseas that have not yet seen it. On Channel 4, there was Battle of Britain reenactment. One in a series of many episodes of, I think it was about 100 fighters that were giving up, foam fighters, which I think the comments on that are quite interesting on the various forums. All the people like Bruce now saying, why is it foam? Why is it all foam? And just imagine trying to get 100 gases all flying together in these day and age for a reasonable price. But that's having a positive effect. A good news story for the industry, isn't it?
Yeah. That sounds fantastic. I'd love to be part of something like that. It looks.
Did you miss that, fun. James? Did you not watch it on Channel 4?
I will now. But yeah, no. Yeah, all of those sort of events and everything. I was watching. What was it? The Western Park model show.
Oh,
is
yes.
that the right one?
Yes,
yeah, there was. I couldn't go to that this year because I was in America. But yeah, there was a big event there where they had fighters and stuff, foam fighters going through. like sort of massive fireworks displays and stuff, and those kind of things on the internet. I think really inspire, you know, people of all ages to get into RC and all of that sort of thing. So,
well, and this gig's FPVs. Come on in, put on YouTube for us, Ian. This gig, it's FPV and all that. So hopefully it will have a positive influence and encourage a few more people in, and help get a positive image for the industry. What am I reading about? And the Ian Gates says you're putting yourself at a disadvantage by going about things the right way currently, and above and beyond 50 meters away is just too far to compete with ENG. I'm not quite sure what ENG means. Does anyone know what ENG means? No.
Sorry.
No. Is it a band? Is it ELO? It's something like that, isn't it? Is it a band? All right.
You were lightening things up. You want to lighten things up, Gary, but did you not read that Sun article? That guy could have been shot for flying a drone over Theresa May's head. Over her head. Did you see a picture of looking? She was, like that. Stock footage.
I just see.
Did you say that was today?
Yeah, that's today. I'll put the link in. I'll put the link in the chat here. Hang on, I'll put the link in the chat. Yeah, there's a link there. That was today, and so I know in Parliament there was there was another meeting. So of course you do wonder with the conspiracy.
Were the pro-Brexit or the anti-Brexit guys?
I think it was a bloke in the park flying his brand new Mavic. That's what it looks like if you look at this.
Sitting on a park bench, so
yeah,
it must have been. If
I reckon he's a member of Alpa.
If they want to promote the hobby, go and look at T-Bob Rap or whatever, Bubble Rap's YouTube channel of the free flight nationals at the BMFA nationals. That is something so exciting. It's the best flying I've ever seen. It's full of excitement. You know, models hitting people in the head and all sorts of things. It's brilliant. That'll get the kids going.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, I love that stuff.
Well, that's called.
Sorry.
No, after you.
I was going to say I did an article on like the, you know, those kind of events from the 1930s recently, and yeah, they're just the same today, pretty much. It's just as much.
Oh, they are. Have you been to the Mayfly at Old Warden, James?
I've not been, but I've seen videos and stuff.
You must put that on your to-do list because if the weather's right, it is fantastic. And I think when they have that big mass launch, isn't that called the Duck and Cover? Something like that, isn't it?
That's an appropriate name.
It's something like that. But I aspire to be, and I tell you what. Anyone that wants to get on in the drone industry, if they go to those free flight events, you'll see some not all old codgers these days, but you'll see some blokes that know how to set up very simple machines to fly really, really well. And if you want to learn about efficiency and setting up models, and they're the people to watch. Really some wonderful, wonderful stuff you'll see about one. Very biased that I aspire to the tweed jacket and being at Old Warden chuckling a few years time.
The guys that are doing these days, they do have CAD modeling tools and physics simulators at their disposal, so they can go. What once was you just file a little bit from here, had a little bit of aura cover over there. Now it's all computer generated, and we can develop some weird moving vehicles that can close with very entertaining shapes, physical shapes, and have some interesting flight characteristics.
I knew her as well.
How else are you going to tell how your rubber-powered tissue and balsa stick model will perform at transonic velocities if you don't have a simulator?
That's right. That's right.
Even today, I'm going to do a challenge to Bruce, and it's related to one of his latest videos. And let's see if Bruce takes the challenge.
First model through the barrier.
And it does not involve either helium or hydrogen. So be ready, Bruce.
Well, bring it on. Tell us what it is. Yeah,
no, not yet.
Oh.
More to the end.
Oh, you've got to wait for summer to come down to us down here, then, have you? Yes, I enjoyed your video about flying in the wind. Of course, it's all wrong, Bruce. You've got the theory utterly wrong there. Again, that's a bit like tethered drones, the flying downwind and into wind and all that. It's one of the old chestnuts that come around. Well, I suppose every equinox, I suppose it'll be back round again. Same old story. Right, let's go on.
A couple of the panels here. I had a question to you guys. One of them was a panel on what we've learned since 2012 here in the United States. What have we learned? And so I posed the question, well, what could be learned from, say, CASA or the DGAC or the Civil Aviation Authorities, UK or Israel? And the consensus on the panel was that, well, they're learning from us. And I take a little bit of I take a bit of exemption to that. Based on the fact that there's many things that you all can do that we cannot without a large amount of paperwork. So I'm just curious to think, in your perspective, what are some things that the FAA could possibly learn from other countries?
Let me start, and then we'll let someone else join in because I'm ranting
Being
mode.
reasonable?
I think all the aviation. I think currently what's happening around the world is we're seeing a shift in power. I think the aviation authorities are doing their best, and look, Bruce is to run away. He's so upset. The aviation authorities are kind of doing their best, and government, in the form of political pressure, is rising more to the fore and getting in the way. That's my take on the situation at the moment. I think if whatever your aviation regulator might be getting cooler, but politicians are going to get in the way. Anyone else want to take over on that?
I agree 100% with you. We've seen this here in Portugal, where the aviation regulators are quite reasonable people. Try to listen to the people that are involved on either the hobby or the professional situation, but somewhere comes along a sighting or a reported sighting of a drone flying on the approach of an airport or landing at the main runway of an airport, and here comes the politicians with some heavy-handed rules. And the regulator has to dodge between what is reasonable and what they've ordered to do.
Also, you notice that they're starting to unload some of this regulation from the aviation regulator onto others. I know that survey in the UK is run by the Department for Transport. And here in New Zealand, they're now also looking at shifting drone regulation from CAA to our Transport Department, because I think the regulators have a fuller appreciation of the true risks and that they are quite low. And they've been voicing this to the politicians. The politicians are saying, how dare you do that? We're going to hand this problem on to someone who we've got more control over and who doesn't understand the problem, so we can better manipulate the outcome. I really honestly think that's happening.
Yeah, agreed.
Sounds likely.
Yeah, well, sorry there, Adam. It's not the answer you wanted, is it?
So you don't think there's anything that we could learn from? No?
Oh, I think
there are some things. There's something like, for example, in New Zealand, we have a really, really, really good piece of regulation, which is what they call a shielded operation. Now, we have all these areas where you can't fly a drone because it's too dangerous for aircraft. But even right next to an airport, if you're flying in a little wooded glen below the tree canopy, there's no reason why you can't fly a drone there, because any manned aircraft that is in the same vicinity has already got far too many problems to be bothered by a little drone. So our regulator has been quite pragmatic and said, well, you know, if you're not posing a threat to manned aviation, then there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to fly there, regardless of the proximity to other things, or whether it's controlled airspace, because it is not navigable airspace, and therefore we have no right to stop people from enjoying themselves in that airspace because they pose no threat. That's something the FAA could really learn from. I think most other regulators could do too.
Yes, true.
I agree. That shielded operation is something I read about, and that's what kind of prompted this thought. Additionally, your nighttime flying is a lot easier to obtain, I believe, as well.
Yeah, well, we can fly nighttime in a shielded operation as well. Again, there's no reason why you can't. If it's night and it's protected from manned aviation, then why can't you fly? I mean, that's why our regulator, in some respects, has been very good. It's looked at the pragmatic side of things rather than just the You know, and that's why I think the government is trying to take this regulation out of their hands and put it into another agency where they have more control, because they don't like it. The politicians, if you start taking control away from them, they get really, really upset.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that perhaps isn't so much towards the regulator, but I'm quite surprised you're in an unusual sort of niche market, Adam, with your pollen. For those that don't know, Adam is from Dropcopter, and they have multi-rotors that are pollinating stuff. So you're in a unique niche from around the world, but a lot of people are trying to run businesses or create businesses over there that have already failed. The place to look at is Australia, because they've been going the longest. And if it hasn't worked in Australia, there's no reason it will work in America, is the bottom line. And I see a lot of reinventing of the wheel as regards to business use cases in America. So perhaps more than the regulator, than the actual business use cases could be looked at.
And there's another thing where New Zealand, another area where New Zealand's been quite good is they draw no distinction between commercial and recreational use of drones, because in reality, the risk profile is no different. So why would you draw a difference between the two? If someone, you know, the old thing I keep saying is, I go to a friend's farm, I use my drone, I film his farm, I do it as a recreational flyer, perfectly good. If a year later, the farmer then says, can you sell me that footage you took for $100 because I want to sell the farm? Suddenly it becomes a commercial flight. Is it retrospectively more dangerous? No, it's not. So the local regulators have realized that, and they've said, well, okay, anyone can fly commercial operations, and there's no special requirement for certification or whatever, and so they've just drawn no distinction at all. What they've done is they've drawn it on the complexity of the operation. So more complex operations operating in more risky environments require certification, but if you want to film a farm in the middle of nowhere with your Phantom 4 and make money out of it, you're quite entitled to do so without any kind of certification.
Yeah, it's too. Yeah, I do. Bottom line for me is I do think that regulators are being railroaded by governments, and that is a bit of a worry for the industry as a whole, and that's to placate newspapers and things like that, and the electronic news gathering, as apparently ENG means.
And you notice even Australia's like this now. They've got that parliamentary committee which has now put all these proposals for registration and automatic return to home stuff onto the Australian regs. The Australian regulations are model regulations. They're perfect in many, many ways. They're really, really good. Of all the regulations around the world, they're probably one of the best. And now the politicians are waiting, and they've had a meeting and they've decided, no, you've got to put registration in, and you've got to put in return to home and all sorts. You know, they are just meddling, and it's just unacceptable. And we should be standing up as an industry and saying, no, experts, don't come wading in just because you've got an electorate and some people behind you. It's not good enough.
That's being driven by the UTM people, I think. I think you'll find they've had a word to a few politicians, and they're very keen to get their systems in place for something that we may or may not actually need. Yeah, it's there's a new. I'm kind of for UTM and against UTM. I'm for UTM because air traffic as a whole has to be updated and has to change and has to modernize. But not at the expense of everybody else. There's no doubt that air traffic can be done in better ways now, and I don't think that the RPAS world should be the guinea pigs for it, and the way to try and work out how the payment system's going to work, because that's what it's all about.
It's interesting. I did the video about no GA below 500 feet. I was surprised at the amount of hostility I got from the manned aviation community over that video. And that's there. They're not allowed to use it legally, but they still want a right to use it. And drones, people with their toys shouldn't be in this airspace. Manned aviation always comes first. I'm thinking, we've got a real problem with some of the GA community, the manned aviation community. They're not going to let go of that 500-foot space that they don't actually have a right to use except in extraordinary circumstances, but they feel it is their entitlement, and they are also out there lobbying strongly to get these drones out of the sky. It is very unfortunate. In fact, the video I put up, someone reported it as unsuitable for advertising, and it got demonetized. I'm pretty sure it was some pilot who thought, because when you demonetize a video like that, YouTube doesn't promote it either. So instead of getting the audience that it should have got, it's had a very small audience because someone was smart enough to say, well, because it has a car crash in it. There's when I say the example of, you take your life in your hands every time you drive on the roads, and I put some video of one of those Russian dash cam videos in there, it got demonetized. Yet the video from which I got the footage is monetized. So that's how YouTube works. And it just shows that they are so keen to stop people latching onto this no GA below 500 feet thing that they're prepared to, utilize the system and be a little bit unfair about how they deal with things.
Apparently, you're the Alex Jones of the drone world, according to he's going to make me say your name.
It's just a conspiracy. That's a conspiracy.
Pudu Jabba said that.
UAS News has now been demonetized.
Yeah, yes, we've come all the way down to 25 cents instead of 50. it's not really. But Squishy's there in the comments. Good evening to you, Squishy. And James is there, who says quite rightly, who wants to pay for UTM? No one, except the people that are going to be forced to pay for it. And sadly, I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm utterly wrong, but it doesn't look like that. I've been following this game long enough to see the sea change, and the sea changes. Politicians are getting involved, and lobby in special interest groups that want to sell us something, not sell us something, force us to use something. That's the difference.
As Ian so cleverly pointed out, people just aren't going to follow the rules. They buggy you. We're not going to do that. I'm not going to pay to fly my drone. They're going to fly it anyway. And there's not enough enforcement. There's not enough feet on the ground to stop people doing that. So all you do is you create a problem where there shouldn't be a problem if you do that. Only if you outlaw drones, only drone owners only outlaws will have drones. That's the way it'll work. It's not a good approach. These people don't understand human psychology. Everyone involved in regulation should do a degree course on behavioral psychology, so they understand how to modify people's behavior in the right way, because they just go in with a big stick, and it doesn't work. People rebel. They say, no, go away. And it amazes me.
Not exactly, Bruce. Even last week, it was the Vuelta, which is the Tour of Spain on bicycle. And there was a video from the Spanish police showing off one of those crazy contraptions that prevent drones from flying. And there was a ban of flying over the cyclists. So the guys were demonstrating the weapon that the special branch of the police in Spain is using to prevent drones from flying. And it doesn't matter on that situation. So those things are being sold actively all over the world now, those anti-drone machines. And I believe we'll see them more and more every day. Even now, for instance, in Portugal, with the kind of restriction we have for flying drones, basically, if you fly the drone on certain areas, you have to get permissions. We are starting to see normal police asking for paperwork from the drone operators, and things are getting more and more legalized. So if you're the casual user that picked up a Phantom or a Mavic or a whatever, what is the Mavic at the Best Buy shop, and you take it off outside, you risk the real risk. You have the real risk of having someone stop you and ask you for the paperwork.
I think the point Bruce was getting at, though, I think, is we're kind of going about it the wrong way. Instead of telling people, no, you can't do something, and if you do, these are the penalties, it's better to do it by reward. For example, if you said, we've got this application we want you to use one of these FINS applications to put your flight plan in, but if you do this, instead of being 150 meters, which the current law is if you're a hobbyist, that you can fly to near a residential area, for example, we'll take that down to 50 meters. If you actually gave people rewards for actually following the laws and adhering to them, you'd actually get more buy-in than you would trying to do it all by penalties and fear. Because all you do then is you just stop people buying drones full stop and damage the whole industry. Or really, we should be saying, let's encourage people to do this, but let's encourage them to do it in a way that's, well, I don't know, if in a way that's safer, that we're happier with. So I think that there is a point there that the psychology of it is it's all the wrong way around. It's negative. I mean, we don't know if it'll work. So we've seen in the past CB radios as I mentioned. You know, that was just made, that was illegal. And everyone had them. And so many people had them, they couldn't even do anything about it. So they then brought out, you know, on the, was it in the FM frequency to be legal. So you do actually risk that if you try and go too strict with the laws, that they become ineffective. And again, if you're putting laws in, you're not enforcing them, then it's just an entire charade.
That's just the case. The laws are starting to be enforced. You all remember, or else, some of those here remember when the seatbelt laws came on effect. At the beginning, no one wanted to use seatbelts. Some cars didn't even have seatbelts. And then came the mandated usage of seatbelts. And I remember, why do I want a seatbelt? This thing cramps my style of nice driving. And today we just go and put on the seatbelt and use it. And it's something, we are going to reach a point where those regulations will become the normal thing to be, and the usages outside of the normal will be penalized, and we still have fines if you're not wearing a seatbelt, and people know there are, because that has been spread out on the public. And
the thing with
these days people don't know that they can be fined, and heavily fined, by using a drone. And here in Portugal, the guy that landed that, I believe it was a Karma on the runway of Lisbon, on the main runway.
It could fly that far.
I don't know from where he started. Perhaps he dropped the battery while flying over the runway, but that's another issue. I believe that guy is going to be a case study to be used, and people will know the consequences of flying without obeying the rules, at least here for now.
Yes, I think seatbelts aren't a good example. I think a better example is prohibition in the 20s, and also the fact that around the world countries are decriminalizing marijuana. When there is a public contempt for the laws, and the laws, even when they're enforced, because drug laws have been enforced, and they really enforced the alcohol laws in the 1920s in the USA, you cannot overcome the fact that if people ignore the laws long enough, then it becomes pointless having those laws. And obviously the laws are there to reflect the wishes of the people, and if the people are saying this is a bad law by showing contempt, eventually you've got to remove the law. And I think that's what happens with drones. If everyone keeps flying their drones underground and secretively in contempt of the laws, then you can't keep that up. It'll be like prohibition.
Bruce,
alcohol becomes illegal.
You're the first guy advocating for sub 250 grams drones that are unrestricted until now. So will people go to the sub 250 grams drones that have no regulation? Most likely, yes. And then
but then what's going to happen is, I think we've already agreed that once the functionality of sub 250 gram drones becomes as good as your GoPro Karma and your Phantom today, they will lower that height, because it's not about anything other than control and revenue. So that at the moment, I think, these 250 gram drones, they're not a problem, because they don't do the things that are we could tax. So now they're just going to drop that. In New Zealand, for example, there is no minimum limit. 25 grams little toy, it's still subject to the same regulations as a 14 kilogram.
You're ahead of the game.
You're on the lower part of the planet. You're on the lower part of the planet. So even 250 grams flies a lot. So the problem
we have trouble getting them down.
We have to have. Don't we have to have more powerful things, because they go up? No?
Gravity sucks around here.
On the subject of
my fear is.
Sorry, go ahead, James.
Please go ahead, James.
On the subject of rebelling, though, I've been thinking about this recently, that it might be slightly different to say rebelling against prohibition in the 20s, in the way that the nature of drone flying is that you often share your videos and your pictures and stuff on the internet, and therefore, unless you have like an anonymous account, it's quite difficult to get away with that, to sort of promote the hobby in a sort of underground way. I'm not saying before the police go knocking on my door in advance of me breaking the law.
Make a note of the time.
If somebody sends me an SD card, but if someone sends me if they send me an SD card with some video on it and I put it on my channel, I can say, I don't know who sent the card. I don't know where it came from. I'm just putting it on my YouTube channel. I'm not a party to the crime. You know, you can't come to me. And that's what will happen. People will send each other cards. And so they can honestly say, I didn't fly this.
That's already happening. There's a very, very famous proponent. There's a very famous proponent in the UK doing that. Yeah.
Might make it a little bit harder though. Couldn't say anything.
Sorry, again, Adam.
Make sure you wipe the camera data on that, because many times it'll tell you where it was taken from. Anyway,
but you can't.
I'm afraid of,
go on, Adam. What are you afraid of, Adam? Spiders.
No, actually, don't mind spiders too much. But preemptive legislation. That was another topic on the panels today. Was the whole 336, and we went down the rabbit hole on that one, and I went on my pulpit and made my displeasure known and asked, are we legislating best interest of who? Who are we legislating for? Are we legislating based off of assumption and fear, or are we legislating based off of things that have occurred? And the consensus is that we're legislating based off of what could happen, which is just fear of the unknown, which is very difficult to repeal. You mean that once it's in place, you're not getting rid of it.
Yeah, and that's a problem with all
very upsetting to hear.
Yeah, that's a problem with all of this all around the world. Is once it's on the books, wherever you are in the world, it's very hard to remove. The UK has this crazy potential stuff coming out, which the Civil Aviation Authority never thought of, and I don't think the AMA in America ever thought that they wouldn't be given the keys to the kingdom and be allowed to be the only CBO, and yeah, you're bob on right, Adam. It's fear-based regulation. So Bruce,
shouldn't insurance be the answer for all of these things?
Yes,
but insurance doesn't save lives.
Well,
no, but it generates revenue.
No, but it's not necessarily we're trying to save lives. We're trying to prevent accidents, and if they should occur, have the proper insurance in place.
Yeah,
I mean, we're so many level. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, that only addresses the property issue, but it's all the hysteria is around. You know, one of these drones is going to bring down an airliner, and hundreds of people will die. That's the big thing that the regulators are looking at, and what the politicians are looking at. So insurance doesn't mitigate that in the least.
No, but we need to be accepting of that, because that's been happening for years with other types of aviation. It's been happening for years with cars. It's been happening for years with a multitude of things we've just become accustomed to.
And I hate the insurance industry anyway. They give you an umbrella on a sunny day, not a rainy day. They'll take your premiums, then try everything they can to dodge the payout. So I see here in New Zealand we had a big earthquake, and so many people have suddenly found that all those premiums they paid for years are worth nothing, because the insurance companies have said, no, we're not interested, go away.
Yeah. To be fair, certainly in the commercial area, in fact, I've not heard any. Well, to be honest, I don't think there have been any accidents with hobbyists to pay out, because I've never heard of a case. But certainly with the insurance industry, so I think actually, someone in the insurance industry even told me this. I mean, there's so few accidents, so few payouts having to pay with drones. You know, it's just kit, you know, when it fails, and paying for that typically. So at the moment, that's why premiums are quite low. So everything is getting paid out, because they aren't the issue that they're made out to be. You know, if you're dealing with the cars or houses with burglary, there's a lot more that the insurance industry has to worry about than, you know, insuring a grand's worth, $2,000 worth of gear. Obviously, you've got the public liability then, but anything that would be really expensive with a drone accident would have to be a really freak accident. You know, the kind of thing you're talking about is a drone malfunctioning, going across a motorway, driver swerving, hitting something, and that causing the accident. So it's all these that be like 1,000,000 to 1 odds of happening, or 1,000,000,000 to 1 even. So I think that's really what should be happening. We should be insuring, and this is why these UK laws, for example, are even more puzzling, because there's nothing there about, oh well, insurance should be mandatory. Before we were adding more legislation, that should have been the first thing to do, and then then you actually have a financial safeguard there. But yeah, it doesn't make sense. I agree.
But did you hear about the new DJI drone? It's called Act of God.
Act of God. DJI Act. that's us in a lot of trouble now. You're being told to wake up in the comments from Chrissy's admin, Bruce, and Andy Lee Robertson ranked he's fitted in his yellow bin because he's had to climb so many trees. Look, insurance.
Can I just answer one comment there? Well, one in the comments. Even tens of thousands of someone in an eye. That is a tiny payout in insurance terms. I can remember. I'm just trying to think of everything we deal with in life. Even as if you're testing computer software for the NHS, a patient's life could die at the end of that if that's wrong. There's considerably more things that we deal with in life that have got risks on other people, on third parties. So I still think even that is a small payout compared to what the insurance industry has to cover.
So then if the payouts are so small, obviously the risk is very small also, therefore is there a need for insurance? So you look at it from that perspective. But the one overriding thing, getting back to what Adam was saying about how we're basically trying to regulate out of fear, uncertainty and doubt, is that the concrete evidence, that is the record of drone safety to date, and things like the scientific or the academic reports like the George Mason University thing that says there's going to be 1 death per 400 years of aviation operations due to a drone at the current rate of use. These things are dismissed. They're dismissed by people. They're looking at the fact, the newspaper, the Sun, and they're forgetting. I can't understand how you cannot base regulation on a comprehensive risk analysis based on historical evidence and proper academic studies into what the risk really is. And those are the things that have been completely discounted so far. And that makes no sense to me. Why are we dealing with this risk so differently to all the other risks that we face on a daily basis?
Well, I mean, that's entirely true, and we've said that before. It should be based off risk and science. I still think you've got an argument there for insurance, because although accidents are few and far between, the while those, usually it's property. Your drone goes out of control, it chinks someone's car. So someone, as a drone owner, you should be paying for that. So I think that there still ought to be covered, and I do think that would take away, if we were to go down that route, it does then take away a lot of demands of saying more legislation. I mean, given a choice between the two, more legislation or paying insurance, surely paying insurance would be the preferred route.
Mind you, I've seen some people around here that have said, because we've been flying in airfield here, I've seen people come and fly models and they've been flying quite recklessly, and I've said, hey, don't do that. If you have something goes wrong, you could hit that hangar or whatever. And some of them have said, look, it doesn't matter, we've got $1 million insurance. And I'm thinking, no. In a way, insurance can actually reduce the safety by giving people that feeling that it doesn't matter what happens, I'm covered,
Security blanket. In the comments, James Dunthorne mentions the reason why he doesn't have a bath, and I didn't realise it. It's because 16 people drowned in bathtubs in 2011 in the UK alone. I think it's a very poor reason for your personal hygiene there, James, but there we are. If that's how you feel, the lens you must go to avoid that sort of risk. But
I like that comment, though, because that's bringing us back again to risk. And when people talk about drones, they get hysterical, because it's people doing DIY with a ladder falling off. I think that's the biggest death with DIY. And we're not saying, well, we're banning ladders or you've got to do a test to go up a ladder. And as we've mentioned before with power tools, third parties getting injured by them, yet you don't have to have insurance to use a power tool. So whenever you look at drones and then you look at other risks, you can always argue it both ways. It's not a clear-cut argument.
I suppose
one of the reasons...
Sorry, Bruce.
Go ahead, mate. You go first, James.
Well, I was just going to say, I suppose, to me, it seems that the legislators, it seems more of an emotional reaction to the greatest possible problem that they could have, or the worst case scenario. So, I think that obviously, as you were saying with the Sun newspaper, etc., it's the same for everyone, but they're just the same as all of these people with hardly any idea when it comes to, what could possibly go wrong with a drone. And if there is a 1 in 4 million chance of it causing an airliner to go down or something like that, then they think that it's worth regulating this much, even though that's not actually a scientific, rational solution to the problem. Seems that is, the way that they think, and it's the way that they think about a lot of problems in the world as well. So that's just my take on it, but that's probably my explanation for why this is the case. It might be quite an obvious thing that points out, but
yeah, that's pretty valid. But one of the things that annoys me is that there's no real sensible stratification in most countries as to the level of risk, because we have the sub 250 in most countries. Oh, that's not a risk, it's a child's toy. But then you've got that range where you've got your Mavics and your Phantoms and things like this, which is like maybe 400 grams. Is that really the same risk as a 15 kilogram octocopter? No, it's not. So why are you regulating it as if it is? There needs to be a more consistent evaluation of risks as you go through the different types of craft and the different masses and so forth, and also the different applications. If someone's flying a little toy in the middle of the field miles from anywhere, the risk factor is probably 0. But if they flew the same thing in the middle of for example, inside at a conference center or in a busy hotel, the risk is massively higher. So it's a one size fits all for most of the regulation, and that's unacceptable. If you're going to do it properly, it has to be fair, and you can't be fair if you are lumbering, not evaluating the risk when you make the rules. And that's the thing. If people don't sense that the regulations are fair, they're going to say, "Oh, we'll do it anyway," and that's what's happening.
Yeah.
Isn't that how they do that with motorcycle registration in the UK? Currently, you start off with a 125cc, and then you can move up to something like a 600cc, and then maybe you can get a liter bike. I'm not sure exactly the measurements, but that seems to be something similar, and it seems to be working. No,
I believe that's the case. Yeah, I've not got a bike, but yeah, I think that's how it works.
Young drivers, I think I'm told now, have to have a black box on board the car, or some sort of app recording their driving methods, standards, ways of doing things, and if they exceed limits, then their insurance can be refused.
Nanny states.
Yes, she's called Theresa. It's Nanny Theresa. That's what they say over there.
I don't have a black box, but I'm just saying.
You don't have one.
No. I'm not sure if that's changed since I've got my license and everything, but
I
believe that
I thought with the black box that was optional.
Yeah, I think it makes an impact on your insurance. So
yeah, I think you get lower quotes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Somebody told me it was a requirement for new drivers now, but obviously I'm wrong with that. Yes.
Yeah. Just to go back to one thing on the comments, because I did say it, but I'll repeat it. When I mentioned ladders, I also mentioned nail guns. Now, to give you a figure on this, 2015, 1,200 third parties injured by nail guns. These aren't other builders. These are totally innocent bystanders from them chinging off knots. So again, if you look at other accident statistics, I say go away and actually do research on other accident statistics. Then look at drones. Unless you do that, you can just say, what if this happens with a drone? What if that happens? But do the what if with anything else in life that we deal with and see what the figures are. And you'll suddenly start realizing, actually, let's put this into context and the risk and then the costs around that and legislation and so on. So that's why I rant about these things, because when you look at other industries and other activities, there's always third-party risks around a lot of other activities that take place. It's not just drones.
Are you not very guilty of doing that banned thing on this channel, which is having common sense? And shouldn't we be looking at what we stand to lose in terms of education and a hobby and celebrating that rather than trying to knock out all these what ifs? Are we not spending enough time showing the world the advantages?
We should say the other way. What if we don't use drones? We've already shown it's a DJI thing, and I know you laugh about it sometimes at times with it being a DJI figure, but I think we're on over 140 people where they've been saved by drones. So
there's another one this week, wasn't there? There
would have been some lives lost had we had not the technology. And if in future we have the technology, it's going to save more lives. I mean, one use case to think about is the bombing we had in Manchester. Now, the fire service didn't go in for over an hour. So we had emergency services not going in because they didn't know what was going on. Now, imagine if you had drones, if you had rovers, so you could actually be land-based drones, whatever. But if we'd have had autonomous vehicles that could go in and check areas. Then you could then bring in the rest of the emergency services faster. So there are a lot of use cases that if people put their mind to it, we could be using to save lives and show the benefit. And once people have had their lives saved by a drone, or they know somebody who has, suddenly public perception will start to change. But if we regulate and stop the progression before people have had the opportunity to see the benefits, it's going to make it so much harder.
Absolutely.
Do we have maybe a fancy fan with some skills with design work that could make a nice infographic showing and accounting for how many lives saved versus how many lives lost using drones, and then throw it to the hive mind on the internet to disperse?
You get a divide by zero error when you try and calculate that.
Well, we must put in Andy Lee Robinson's very important stat that's also in the comments of 2,300 people sent to ER last year of both pizza-related injuries. We can't miss that one out. Yeah.
Yeah, but those pizzas were probably delivered by drone.
By drone. Yes. Yes, that's right. Yeah, I know. It's very, I don't know. I do think we've got to change.
The thing that I put my model flying hat on again is I don't care what they do to drone flyers. Idiot drone flyers that are doing things wrong, throw the book at them, lock them up, put them on the electric chair. I don't give a damn. What I care about is the hobby. The people like James and myself who have a history of building stuff and doing stuff, and we've never ever been a danger to the public or to property, but we are being tarred with the same brush, and it's time that things happened and things were changed so that drones are not model aircraft. There's a huge divide between them, but as far as the regulator is concerned, they're too stupid or lazy or indolent to actually make that differentiation, and that's where we perhaps have to focus our attentions if we're speaking on behalf of the hobby, and that's where the AMA has fallen flat on its face.
Most of the hobby model flyers do already have the places to fly. It's the approved flying fields, so go to the flying field.
I still have to register under this thing. Why do I have to register? I've done nothing wrong. Why would I have to register just to do something I've been doing for 45 or 50 years without causing any issues? Why am I? And again, this is because I'm being treated as a drone flyer, tarred with the same brush. There's no right to do that. We are not a group that is a risk to anyone, so why should we have to bear the burden of other people doing bad things?
I think most of the legislations all over are making a distinction between hobby model flyers and drone operators.
Not in the USA, you still got to register your models if you're in the USA.
Yeah, but if you look at the Aeros guidelines that have been coming out, there are still the distinctions between model flyers and drone operators. The big problem is where to do model flyers use their vehicles, which supposedly is always on an approved flying field. That's the biggest problem. If you keep them locked on their fields, it's okay.
But even then, we've been flying models in parks ever since I was a kid. Every time we went down the park, there'd be someone flying a control line model, or there'd be some, and so it's not new to be flying outside of approved areas, and there's never been issues with it. So I don't think that should, I can see what they're probably going to do is say you are not flying a drone if you're flying on a BMFA or an FAA approved flying field. But the reality is those fields are becoming fewer and farther between, and people who live in an urban area who've got a perfectly good park they can go and fly in, why should they have to travel 50 miles to go to an approved field, especially if it's an 8 or a 9-year-old kid? It just makes no sense at all.
No, it's I can tell you it's an all-day activity to go to fly to an approved airfield where I live. So you leave in the morning, to travel 50 or 60 or 80 kilometers down, and then you are there and you have to be associate from that club and all that stuff. That's what the rules have been up until now, and I think that won't change. What is going to change is what we used to call the Indians that would fly their vehicles anywhere they wanted, and that's what is being trying to be regulated, and they call those Indians that would fly wherever they wanted the drone pilots.
I think, unfortunately, with a lot of laws, we're not going to see a differentiation because what they're concerned about is it's just going to be too difficult to enforce and explain this to the police. So if we just consider everything that looks like a model of any any shape or form, and we'll call it a drone. And that way we can just easily legislate. Because the moment we start saying something to drone, something to model aircraft, and again, there'll be some wise guy, there'll be some smart ass that puts a drone inside something that looks like, you know, a normal RC model to do it that way. So that's all they're thinking about. They're thinking it's just easier to lump it all together. And I think, unfortunately, that's going to happen, and we're not going to be able to do much about it. And it's unfair, but I think that's unfortunately where we're going to be.
You're absolutely right. A popular trope today that I kept hearing was CCC, which was compliant, careless, or criminal, and they refer to any drone they see in the air as one of these three, and they don't know how to identify it. And so the popular answer was, well, universal ID. And what that actually means, nobody knows. But what is universal ID? Well, the popular opinion from that step is then requiring the manufacturers to put them in everything. But then what happens to the person making their own? Are they going to have to go out and find some special sort of universal ID that no one knows what it is? I don't know.
Well, this is the next group of people that are standing up to have a little chunk of cash off you, isn't it? It's the counter UAS crew, compliant and non-compliant traffic. It's the next dodge. But Bruce might have something different to say to me, but I think it's one of these things, a bit like the UTMs. We'll watch them come and we'll watch them go. If the UTMs get approved, then unfortunately they'll stay around. We'll all pay a little bit of money for our financial instrument for needless services. Thank you, James. I have actually written that down. That is a brilliant acronym. But if they run out of VC money before they get the ticket to go for it, then they'll all disappear. But there's a rush to get them all around the world at the moment, and the counter UAS stuff as well. But who's going to have the keys to this? Who is going to be the key holder? Is it going to be the aviation regulator? Is it going to be these private companies? What a rabbit hole to fall down. And actually, Adam, so was the mood of the conference really, we want all these things because we want to protect our commercial interests?
I'm not going to say who was on the panels, but there seemed to be a lot of, I respect the entrepreneurial spirit. I respect the whole bottom-up approach to small companies building things and innovating, but at the same time, wringing of the hands, the danger. And yeah, I do think I think it's a money grab. That's what I see.
Yeah, I'm not sure that the six of us are the right gang to save the world. And James, UTM, I shall rephrase what I said. Yes, UTM, air traffic needs to change. I get a lot of that. But a lot of the companies aren't about that. They are about grabbing money. Some aren't. There's a couple that aren't, but unfortunately, the majority are. Now, what else?
Even UTM. I dispute UTM. If you make the sub 500 area or no go for GA, except on special requirements such as having it previously NOTAMed in advance, like they want us to do with the fins system. That's effectively they want us to do. Let GA do that. They want to come down to below 500. You do that, not us, and stay away from airfields. And then you don't need to manage that traffic. It will take care of itself. And it's not a threat to manned aircraft. So why do you need a UTM for every man and his dog who's got a little drone flying it on a Sunday in the local park? It's complete overkill. It's not necessary from a safety perspective. To be safe, just get the people out of the shark-infested waters, and you don't have a problem anymore.
Sorry, Bruce, I will have to fine you because you're using common sense.
Yes.
Common sense is not allowed in here. Sorry.
No, we won't have that because it's common and we're far from common. There's just a couple more stories I noticed. I noticed that Bell and teammates, as the press release said, are going to be doing a trial with their VTOL with NASA in 2020. I'm not quite sure why that, why that was a big news story that they're doing a trial with NASA in 2020 for BV loss.
Takes a long time to do the 3D renderings, mate.
I mean, why would you start? I was a bit of a loss as to why you would be boasting about that. And then the other one that I certainly want to mention before I throw it over to the floor is do we all see Lockheed Martin have got in with artificial intelligence and Brucechain for racing drones? And I'm quite surprised that the drone racing leagues you know, very happy to talk about that, because plainly that's military use cases. They don't want to go racing consistently. I don't know. Anyone want to talk about that?
I think DRL is going through a lot of money, so they've got to keep their profile high to keep the cash flowing, because I don't think it's been the commercial success that they might have hoped it to be. And I have no doubt that AI can beat a human pilot, just as computer cars can outperform human drivers on things like the Nürburgring and things. Computers are very good at that, at very specifically well-defined tasks. They can beat humans, you know, pretty easily. But I've got to ask, where's the benefit to this? What are we going to be? Does it mean that instead of going and flying in a drone race, you simply program up your little computer and let it fly? There must be, as you say, it's military spin-off effects, I suppose. But yeah, it's all like a big. It's like people wanting to keep their name in the media, including the defence people. Say, look, we're doing wonderful things with drones and AI and stuff. But really, practically, is it going to affect any of us? Oh, I don't think so.
Yeah, I was a bit surprised. James is asking in the comments, can I build a side chain on Brucechain? That's one of those extra currencies, isn't it? So I'll let you have to decide that. And then
I have to talk to the president of Venezuela, because I'm all tied up with cryptocurrency at the moment. That's the one. That's the future he's told me.
Well, there we are then. If you've been told, you've been told. And Pudu Jabba, you have to market something that hasn't happened when you can't market something that has happened. That's another line I like. I like these comments. That's very, very true. Ian Gates says, I don't understand why regulators think hobbyists and commercial users are so dangerous. I've never gone out to fly thinking I'd really like to waste some money and crash this thing. Yeah, I know, exactly. Yes, that's very, very. Can I launch an ICO on it too? Now there's what's an ICO? Anyone know what an ICO is?
Kind of.
It's an O that isn't it an O that's been left in the fridge?
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
Initial kind offering.
Oh. I keep up with everything I do. Well, I'm glad you're all here, because you can answer and tell me, can't you? So that's grand. And in the UK, Vertical Aerospace has launched yet another UAV, which I've forgotten what it means now. What does UAV mean? It means urban air vehicle now, doesn't it? Not what we used to think it is. So I think that's what I took from that really is that urban air vehicle is recycling one of the acronyms, and we get so many acronyms in this business that it's good that we can use them again. You know, so all that paper. Another New Zealand Chris. Chris is here. It's to hunt down the Soylent escapees. Again, something I don't know. I've read something about that. Chris, have you flown the wardrobe yet? Chris, have you flown the wardrobe? Lion the Witch in the Wardrobe. You could be the lion there, Bruce. So anyway, did anyone else see anything else that caught their eye this week?
Yes.
Well, I've seen a nice video from Mr. Simpson, which has gone and pick up the Nitro mania from a few years ago. So my challenge to Bruce is next video we want one of these, Bruce.
49, is that?
I can accommodate you. It will be a Black Widow though, because I have a Black Widow, which is a little more powered, slightly a bigger tank.
Okay, so next video we want one of these, at least one.
No problems.
No problems. Yep. Next video, but we want it on YouTube and flying.
Didn't you have?
Don't you worry.
What did you have on that light plane that you were trying to make? Was that the even smaller one?
I've got the little stick with the Cox 020 and the 010, and I've got a bonsai with a Black Widow on it.
Those were always motors of my desire. They were always in the magazines on those. Was it the Cox plastic control line things that had them on the front?
Yeah, they flew thanks to centrifugal force.
That's it, unless your arm fell off. And also San Francisco crash. We mentioned that at the beginning, James. We won't say you're a late comer, but we did speak about that San Francisco. And other James Dunthorne in the comments. Sorry, James.
Oh, okay.
James. Too many James.
We were both late then, yeah.
But he's actually James Coyne now, as he shall now be called.
Being born and raised in San Francisco, I've got to say they've got bigger problems than that.
Wow. Yes, isn't that building in trouble anyway?
Oh, is that the one that's falling over?
I think it is. Yeah, same building. So yes, it's a lot worse. And Pudu Jabba, I'm saying his name a lot tonight. Elon Musk said flying cars are stupid. I didn't catch it. Did anyone else catch that in the news this week?
Yeah,
He was probably
pollution.
stoned at the time.
Yeah.
Good for him.
He said that a long time ago, I think.
Did he?
Yeah, I remember seeing an interview where he was saying, you know, what's the deal with this? Because you know, I have to agree in some ways that I'd be more excited about better, you know, public transportation systems and futuristic monorails and stuff like that, instead of like there's like an Aston Martin concept car that's just come out, which is, I'm not sure if you've seen, but I don't know how much that would cost if that was real. So it's only going to be very, very, very rich people who can have these things in some ways. But
Elon Musk thinks it's clever to build a hyperloop where you put people in a tube that's with no air in it, and then fire them along at such speeds that if there's any kind of imperfection in the tube, they're going to be smeared along the inside for miles.
No, but we can mitigate that risk with a person with a flag standing in front as it goes. I mean, that's how...
Insurance, mate. Just insurance.
Just insurance. Oh, that'll do it. Mitigate. Adam, the insurer. What else?
He was recently on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he made a point about we're using basically people warehouses in 3 dimensions, but then forcing them into 2 dimensions to transport them. And he was saying it's much easier to dig down into the earth, transport them in a 3-dimensional way, rather than going up in the sky to transport them in a 3-dimensional way. And I can't disagree with that. However, I don't know if I want to get in the tube. I'd much rather get in the air thing.
Well, as I said, I'm an underground flyer. Underground, that's where I'm at.
Yes, he's ahead of the game yet again. Yes, but all of these flying car ideas. Well, look, here we are. We're in the modern world. We've got. Oh, I can't quite remember. You're New York side, aren't you? There, Adam. So we go from New York all the way around to New Zealand now, with Western Spain, the UK, and Portugal. Sorry, Louis. But why we haven't had to travel anywhere? Surely travel is going to reduce anyway. In the modern world, why will we need to do all these things? And I think it's interesting that Uber's big success story now is not the cars, it's the bicycles, because you'll be stuck in traffic in an Uber as much as you'd be stuck in your own car. So the bicycles in cities are doing better than the cars.
What I want to know is where is Ken Moller? What's happened to him? He was the flying car man and he's disappeared.
He has, and then of course down there the jetpack that's down there. But that UK, I actually had a word to him the chap in the UK with his jetpack, and the most amazing thing about that is there's no flight controller. It's him.
Didn't he have an engine failure recently and fall in the water? Was that him? Or was that the American crowd?
That was him or his Oppo at Bournemouth. Yeah, but yes, it's because it's got electronic control units for the motors and all those sort of things to keep them sweet. But it's just moving his arms that is the control of that thing. So that's
Iron Man.
Well, it's like a leap forward by going backwards, sort of a thing. Well, it's awesome. And what does Chris say?
Like flying helicopters before we had gyros and crap, you know?
Yeah, that'll be it.
But you make a very valid point, Gary, about, you know, we're doing this how many countries at once and communicating and accomplishing our goals. And now in San Francisco, as we were talking about, there's a perpetual rush hour. It never ends. And it's reached a point where if they stopped telecommuting and everyone went on a normal commute in the morning and at night, they would never get to work because there's too many of them because they're always moving.
Yeah. We live in the modern world. We don't need all to be flying around everywhere. It'd be fun. It'd be a great deal of fun. I would enjoy it. I don't know. Would I enjoy? Would all of us actually enjoy being in a completely autonomous air taxi, being taken by something somewhere?
But Adam, that's why we have self-driving cars, so you can work in the traffic and you can just have your internal office in your little car there, and that's the future.
Yeah.
Well, I do everything from my phone, so it's my wheelchair, but that's fine with me.
Yeah, well, you're the man to talk about risk, of course. You know,
Indeed.
Yeah, yeah. It's a funny old world, isn't it? It's a funny old world. And Squishy, I don't say live on a spaceship. Oh, the sort of Dragon's Den. We haven't spoken about Dragon's Den.
Yeah, keep it with that one.
I was thinking mention that too. Yeah.
Well, he was. There was a chance he was going to come on, but that chance has obviously gone. But Dragon's Den, all right. You take it away, Ian. Take it away.
Well, how many of you are familiar with Dragon's Den? Because obviously it's a UK thing. I think there's a US version, but are you all familiar with it?
Shark Tank in the USA,
Yeah, well, Dragon's Den over here. We have what's called the Drone Safe Register, which is one of the... it's kind of a map, a register for commercial operators. I think they've got somewhere around about 200 or 300 of them. There might even be 400 now, so it's probably about 10% of the active commercial operators. And they went on to Dragon's Den. The way they work at the moment is they take an annual subscription for you being a member, and then the idea is then people can find you on the website and contact you about jobs. And they had various dragons. At first, I think some of them weren't that clear on about drones or a little bit hostile towards them. But Peter Jones, who's quite into technology, and he owns Jessup's, which is quite a large camera shop here. I think it's probably equivalent to like is it B&H or whatever you have in the US. So he seemed quite interested in it. So he put an offer in. He wanted 50% of the business. And I think that was for 60K off the top of my head. And the other dragons came in somewhere around about 25%. But he opted to go with Peter Jones just because of his experience. It was slightly funny actually, because Peter Jones was bragging how he knows that much about drones. Then asked him what drone it was he flew in, which was an Inspire, and it's like, well, if you don't know one of them, you definitely don't know your drones. So that was quite funny, and he was also of the view that it's a booming business, drones. It's exponential, which it's far from proven. I don't think it is going to be, especially if legislation that we've talked about hits. But either way, he's gone in and he's bought 40% of the business. He is a well-known face over here, though. So actually having him, it depends how involved he gets, but it could be a positive, because obviously people recognise him. They don't even know about drones. So, and if he was to start bringing up the issue of all the illegal operators, that would allow us to get some traction if we had a voice like that. But obviously, he's not a chance to do any of that yet. All he's done so far is a slightly cheesy advert where, to show the positives of drones, he said, "Oh, here you go. You can contact one of our members. You can do a roof inspection." But immediately, I thought that was kind of funny, because the 50-meter rule means actually you can't do a lot of roof inspections, not unless you've got an OSC, because you'll always be close to one of the next door neighbours of the house, and all it takes is the next door neighbour saying, "No, you can't do it," and that's a job you can't do. But
you need I do think Zoom.
Yeah, I do think having someone of his caliber could be good for the whole industry, provided he actually starts to understand what the issues are and is vocal about challenging them. The only one point I do have a concern about, and I'd mentioned it in the past, which I haven't seen so much of recently, so it might not be too much a worry, but the whole thing of drone safe register, the way the marketing was before was to suggest that unless you were a commercial operator, you're inherently unsafe, which I think is a very bad message, because you're saying to the public at large that drones are inherently unsafe, unless you just happen to have sat a 2-day course and done a practical exam, which is the wrong message. We should be saying, as an industry, period, drones are safe, no ifs, no buts, but you should still be in the hands of a professional operator, because they're insured and they know how to go about doing things in a structured and proper manner. So as long as we don't start getting into that of trying to push things on negatives, push them on the positives, and I think we all win then.
The only thing I saw on that clip of that Dragons Den shark is two things. One, the person, the shark that went with the business said quite some things that I don't know if they are true, because he said at some point that drones, there would not be DJI drones in UK if it was not for him, or something on that sort. And the valuation, 60K only.
Well, that's all he'd asked for. So it's 60. He'd asked for 60K, and he didn't really want to give away a 40% share. He's chosen Peter Jones because of his experience, and the fact he's got the Jessup's camera store probably means they can align the two.
Yeah, but I think 60K, and considering the UK size market, isn't that undervaluating the entire opportunity?
No. Well, he's not
Oh.
here to defend his business, but are the operators on indexing services, shall we say, are they necessarily the specialist operators that are making the big money in the industry, or are they people that are trying to get themselves into some sort of registry to push through to get any sort of work at all? Yeah. Are the big inspection companies part of Drone Safe Register, I wonder?
You've got a mix of people in there. So I think with these registers, you are getting people that are suitable for the job, and usually they'll have maybe show reels and explanation of the services they've got. So you'd be picking the right person. But you've got to consider at the moment that, as we've discussed, well, there's only 4,500 operators, and seeing that the actual percentages, if you look at them, kind of suggest we might be going for a slowdown now. And they've only got about 10% of that slice. And then you've got like Approved Drone Pilots, which is a free register as well. So they've got some competition there that's, whilst they might have slight differences, still not all operators are prepared to pay. You know, a lot of operators say at the moment, I'm not prepared to be on the registry because I've got enough costs as it is. I'm not getting enough benefit of drones in general. Or they're saying, I'm getting my business because I'm marketing myself locally, and it's all done through word of mouth, and you know they kind of got a rolling business anyway where they don't need to advertise themselves as much. So you're never going to get that whole 4,500. You know, even if you got a quarter or half of that, that would be a major achievement. And we can't say yet that there's going to be a huge growth. And in fact, if the legislation we've talked about comes about, I genuinely think we will see the first reduction in overall number of active permissions, but obviously time will tell.
No, but isn't that, sorry, Gary, go ahead.
No, well, I was just going to say, it's funny, in a time when general aviation is shrinking, commercial aviation is shrinking, they need 9,000 pilots a month or whatever it is now, and not happening. The whole aviation industry is shrinking, and if that legislation comes through in the UK, then they'll shot themselves in the foot and slowed down something that could have kept growing.
Yeah, but for instance, that drone registrar, I've been unfortunately, I've been having to resort to some of the services of some of the players in the market, and there are already pan-European registrars where you can try to locate the pilots. So
yeah, I was surprised.
A country wide good enough, or a pan-European like the ones I've been using, or even in US, you go and try to rent a pilot, or rent a pilot and a drone, or rent a drone. You can have all sorts of variations, and depends on the countries.
Well, I thought it's interesting. Normally in those Sharky, Dragon's Denny type programs, they say, but can anyone copy it? Can anyone do, you know, what's to stop me? So Peter Jones actually normally would be the first person to say, well, what's to stop me starting my own website just like this? So I was quite interested that they didn't go down that line of question.
Yeah, I think they've missed out there because apart from, as I mentioned, there was the approved drone pilots. There's always been, because is it Airvid? I think the one that was global, but someone bought that out. So there's always been a few. I think what DSR's had that they don't is obviously the marketing in the UK. So I would say it's probably better known than some of the free ones. But yeah, it's a genuinely valid observation that there's going to have to be work there to make it profitable, and to keep being profitable and to keep growing.
Ian Gates is saying it's expensive to become a manned pilot. Well, some airlines are actually beginning cadet schemes where they will pay you back your training now if you are a suitable qualification. So the airlines are actually desperate for pilots now. Shark Tank is just Jerry Springer for a different audience. That is about right.
One point that was made in the comments was saying that there's money in the data, and I'm not quite sure what's meant by that, but that there was certainly money in having access to any customer base they've got. Because if you think about it, your commercial operators spend more money on gear typically than a lot of hobbyists. Yes. So you would buy the, you might buy at least probably buy an Inspire, you might buy a Mavic along with that, you might go on to a Matrix or something even more expensive. So then you've got that mailing list of all those customers. So given that he's already got Jessup's that sells drones, it could then be a marketing tool to actually sell those. And also you could start thinking about then of getting involved with the training company and selling training, and you could then kind of own that little section of market end to end.
But I've already told him I'm going to sell him the remote ID tracking devices so I can work out who owns what and where they're flying all day long when this is mandated for us all to have.
So basically what we are doing now, we are doing the business plan for the guys that got 60K is what we are doing now, right?
And Richard in the comments mentioning Skydio's SDK. Yes, I don't know if anyone else has applied to be part of that. I have as well. That is very exciting. And Skydio is bubbling to the top, and they, in my opinion, are the ones to watch. I don't quite know. I'm not quite sure how they'll bubble absolutely to the top, but I'm definitely watching them. They're very exciting stuff from Skydio. Very exciting. Yes, they're talking about that in the comments. Now, did anyone else see anything else before we go? It's getting late, and Adam was supposed to be paying attention to a conference. So, gentlemen, thank you very much. James, thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully you'll join us again. James's channel is in the bottom, dear viewer. Please click on the link and have a look. It's a great channel. It's, and I'm sure it'll go far. And you've all seen his work on the flight test channel. Bruce, have you got anything coming out in your channel this week?
I'm not sure yet. The weather's looking very good, so there could be still a lot more flying stuff coming out. And stay tuned. If it's calm enough for long enough, there may even be some balloon activity.
Hey, shoots, he scores. And Louis, what's happening in your world?
Oh my God! Now I'm drowning on paperwork, safety metrics plans, operation manuals. Welcome to the real world of operating drones in Europe.
There you go. And go on, Bruce.
The risk, Louis, is from paper cuts, is it?
Oh my God! That for 1,000 cuts.
And some people say he's just a paper tiger. Ian, what's in your concrete mixer based world? Actually, you've been building computers, haven't you? I know what you've been doing.
Yeah. I'm still on building my supercomputer. It's going to be I don't know, probably another month or two before I finish it. But I have done my first edit on it. I'm actually I'm involved in a car show called Not Too Grand. It's won a blog of the year award. I don't actually write for it at all, but I was involved with it just for the drone work. They said, "Could you be a drone pilot for it?" Went along, and I just ended up doing all of it. So all the ground stuff. Didn't get to fly the drone because it was raining, but yeah, keep an eye out for that. And I'll fire you a link when it eventually comes out. That was great fun.
And we see Adam and I'll actually prove he's actually in a bar somewhere or a strip joint.
No, my apologies. It's behind me, and this is what.
we'll let you rush off on your.
Taking place in a casino, so I had to pick and choose my locations.
Oh yeah. You just keep coming with the stories. Keep coming with the stories, Adam. We'll believe you. We'll absolutely believe you. What's Dropcopter doing this week? Have you got any more test flights going down?
So we've got a hurricane coming up north.
Oh, so you do.
The Gulf or wherever it is. shenanigans. So Friday is out, but we just did some of our safety.
Blown away. He should watch my video on flying in the wind. Then he'll be safe.
He will.
And just continuing to do safety maneuvers and submitting our paperwork. But all filed, just getting revisions back.
Cool, man. All right. Well, I look forward to following it with interest, and we'll unpack a little bit more of. It's probably trade secrets is what I want to know, so I shouldn't ask. But anyway, gentlemen, thanks very much, everybody, for joining us tonight. Dear viewers, wherever you are in the world, thank you as well. Thanks for all the comments. They've been great tonight. Be safe for the rest of the week if you're flying on the weekend. Enjoy it. If you are in the path of that hurricane, as my nephew is as well, be careful and probably invest. All right, we're just saying goodbye now, Adam. All right, guys. Cheers. See you all next week, 2900 GMT. Cheers, Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.